Okay, the meeting's live.
It's just gone 10 o'clock, so good morning everybody and welcome to this meeting of the West Mercia Energy Joint Committee. So my name is James Walton and I'm the Section 151 officer at Shropshire Council and the Treasurer of the West Mercia Energy Joint Committee. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to hear the audio of the meeting and view the papers that are shown on the screen. The meeting is being held using remote technology, and should any committee members experience technical difficulties during the meeting, they should immediately contact the designated IT officer on the number they have already been supplied with. Everyone is requested to mute their microphones unless asked to speak. Please only use the chat function to indicate the desire to speak, and do not use that chat function for anything else, so that it is clear who is asking to speak and the debate has to be heard by those listening on the audio feed. At the start of the meeting, members of the committee will be asked to confirm their presence and any disclosable pecuniary interests that they have in any of the items on the agenda. Everyone that speaks during the meeting, including members of the committee and officers, are asked to introduce themselves each time before they speak. This is so that those who are listening know who is speaking. So I'll now move on to the roll call and disclosable pecuniary interests. Members are reminded to disclose any pecuniary interest in any matters to be discussed which is not included in the register of interests, and leave the meeting by switching off their camera and muting their microphone prior to the matter being discussed. So I'll now read out each member's name and ask them to confirm presence and confirm if they have any interests. So, Councillor Liz Harvey.
Yes, I can see and hear you, and I don't have any interest to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Gemma Davis.
Yes, I can see and hear you, James, and I have no interest to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Notting.
Yes, I'm here. No pecuniary interests.
Thank you. Councillor Robert Macy.
Yes, I'm here. No disclosable interests.
Thank you. Councillor Lee Carter.
Councillor Carter sends his apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Ray Evans.
I'm here and I have no interest to declare.
Thank you. And then Councillor John Smith, I believe, has submitted apologies. And Councillor Adrian Hardman, I believe, has submitted apologies as well. Thank you. Are there any other members here, just to confirm? No, thank you. So I'll now ask officers to introduce themselves. So if we can just quickly run around those. So we have Nigel Evans.
Morning, Nigel Evans, Director of West Mercia Energy.
We have, let's just work down the list of everybody here. So Alex Riley.
Hi, Alex here from WR Partners.
Thank you. Ben Boswell.
Good morning, Ben Boswell, Head of Environment, Climate Emergency and Waste from Herefordshire Council.
Thank you. Kerry Plowski.
Good morning, Kerry Plowski, Head of Internal Audit for West Mercia Energy.
Emily Marshall.
Good morning, it's Emily Marshall, Committee Officer, Shropshire Council.
Gavin Owen.
Hi, Gavin Owen, Business Development Manager, West Mercia Energy.
I'm just double checking who I've asked and who I haven't asked. Joe Pugh.
Hi, Joe Pugh, Finance Manager, West Mercia Energy.
Okay, if I call Andrew out a second time, but please forgive me. John Fletcher.
Yeah, morning everyone. It's John Fletcher, Audit Partner at WR Partners, External Auditors.
Nigel Denton.
Morning, Nigel Denton, Commissioning Development and Procurement Manager, Shropshire Council.
Peter Chatterton. Pete's not here. Okay, is there anybody else I've missed out? Apologies if I have. Anybody else I've missed out on the call? Okay, that's looking good. Thank you. Okay, if we now move on to the first item, which is election of the chairman. So the first item of business is to elect the chairman for the ensuing year. Could I have nominations, please, for the chairman? Any nominations for the chairman, please?
Could I just ask about, there was a paper that came forward that said that it was another council's turn to take it. Do we have any nominations from that particular council?
Sorry, I was muted before. I think it's the turn for Telford and Wrekin, so I'm quite happy to propose Councillor Ray Evans from Telford and Wrekin.
Well, that's very kind of you, Peter.
It's a dubious honour, believe me.
Well, why do you think I kept quiet? Because if it's Telford and Wrekin, it's me.
So we have Councillor Ray Evans nominated. Are there any other nominations? I'm guessing not, given the amount of time it took for that nomination to come through. Therefore, do we need to vote on this, Emily, or can Councillor?
Yeah, we can just say if no one indicates otherwise that it's accepted.
Okay, so I'll just check. Everybody comfortable with that? Otherwise, please indicate. No indications. So in that case, if you're happy, I'll hand over to Councillor Evans now. Thank you.
Thank you. So we move on to item 2, which is apologies and substitutions. Can the committee officers confirm if there are any apologies or substitutions?
Thank you. It's Emily Marshall, Committee Officer. Apologies have been received from Councillor Hardman and Councillor John Smith, and also from Councillor Carter. And there are no substitutes.
Thank you, Emily. Item 3 is appointment of Vice Chair. Do we have any nominations for the appointment of Vice Chair for the coming year?
I'm tempted to suggest we nominate one of the ones who haven't appeared today from, say, Worcestershire. It'll teach them to attend meetings. But Adrian Harmon is very experienced, so I'd be quite happy to nominate Adrian to be Vice Chairman.
Do I have a seconder? I'll second that in his absence. Okay, so we've got a nomination and a seconding for Adrian Hardman. Do we need to move to a vote again? Or should we work on the basis, does anybody object to that?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Fine, okay, lovely. So Adrian is now appointed Vice Chair. Item 4 on the minutes to confirm, so to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th, 2020. Can I move that the minutes of the West Mercia Joint Energy Committee meeting held on the 29th September, as circulated with the agenda papers, be signed as correct, as a correct record? Can I have a seconder for that?
Happy to second it. Peter Nuttin from Shropshire.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone else? Okay, so we can now accept these minutes as a true record. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, public question time. Emily, do we have any questions from the public?
Hi, it's Emily Marshall, Committee Officer. No public questions have been received.
Thank you. Item 6 is disclosable pecuniary interests. This has been dealt with during the roll call. So item 7 is supplier contracts. Can the Director of West Mercia Energy introduce himself and present this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Nigel Evans, Director of West Mercia Energy. The WME standing orders states that as Director of WME, I am required to maintain a register, and in this register, any actions under certain clauses as outlined within our standing orders are to be recorded, and that I am to report to the Joint Committee any entries since the last meeting. On this occasion, I can confirm there are no such entries in the report in the register since the last meeting, Chair. You're on mute, Chair.
Thank you. So if we have any members from the committee who wish to indicate, have they done that on the chat function, or could you do that now? I'm guessing there are no comments. Okay. Are there any points that anybody wants clarification on? So if there are no speakers, can I ask the committee to note the update? Thank you. So item 8 is the external audit plan for 2021. Nigel, please can you present the item? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Nigel Evans, Director, West Mercia Energy again. As is usual at this meeting, the Joint Committee are asked to approve the draft external audit plan for the current financial year. In addition, the Joint Committee are asked to approve the commissioning of WMR partners to undertake the audit work in accordance with their plan. As many of you will recall, in recent years, Grant Thornton have conducted our external audit work, but it was agreed at this meeting 12 months ago that we would run a procurement exercise to test best value moving forward. The winner of the exercise was WMR Partners, who are a local firm of auditors. We are joined today by John Fletcher and Alex Riley from WR Partners, and I will now pass over to John to run through their service plan for the 2021 audit. Thank you, Nigel. Yeah, it's John Fletcher here, audit partner at WR Partners. And overall responsibility for delivering the statutory audit for WME this year, so of the financial statements for the year ending 31st of March 2021. I've been joined today as well by Alex Riley, who's the audit manager responsible for the delivery of the audit, and Alex will be helping me to present the audit plan to you all today as well. Can I just confirm that everybody's had a copy of the service plan prior to the meeting? So if I talk through it, have you got access to a copy in front of you? Excellent. Okay, I can see the nod, so that's good. Thank you. And I think just before we go into the service plan, as Nigel referred to, I guess it's our first year of working with you, and I thought it might just be useful to quickly give you an overview of WR Partners for those of you who aren't familiar with us as an organisation. As Nigel said, we are a local firm of chartered accountants and statutory auditors. We're around about 250 people now. We operate out of 6 offices in Shropshire, Mid Wales, and more recently in Cheshire as well. And until last year, we were known as Whittingham Riddell. So some of you might be more familiar with that name until we rebranded to WR Partners last year. As part of the overall firm, we've got a growing audit team of around about 40 people who just are dedicated to solely focusing on audits and related services. And that's to limited companies, it's to charities, academies, and not-for-profit organisations, including related entities of councils. I think we're delighted to be asked to tender for the audit this year, and clearly excited to be working with the organisation. And the service document that you've got in front of you today outlines our audit approach for this year, and how we intend to execute the audit. So I'd just propose that we probably it will be about the next 10 to 15 minutes just to turn the pages on that document, just focus on the key areas. Please, if there's any questions as we're going through, do ask them, or feel free to ask at the end as well. Okay, so I think we'll start just in section 1, which just confirms the scope of the work that we're performing. So the organisation prepares its own financial statements. Our role is to audit those in accordance with the international standards on auditing, which are known as the ISAs. And as part of that, there's 2 key documents that we'll present to the committee. Firstly, today is the service plan that we'd ask for your input on, comments on, and ultimately the approval of before we start our field work. And then towards the end of the process, when we meet in September, we'll also issue the report to management and the committee on our audit findings and recommendations. Our audit approach is clearly in line with the auditing standards. We make an assessment of materiality, which we'll come on to shortly, and we clearly audit any material transaction streams and any material balances on the balance sheet. In addition to that, though, it's also a risk-based audit. So we also make a risk assessment, and we focus on those risks and pay particular attention to those when executing the audit. Part of today will present that initial risk assessment to you that's ultimately come out of the audit planning work that we've performed to date. And we'll ask for your comments on and input on that risk assessment as well before we commence our work. We also, as a bit of background to the audit approach, we perform detailed substantive transactional testing on those transaction streams and material balances. We also look to test where it's appropriate to do so and where it's efficient to do so, the internal controls of the organisation. Clearly you have your own internal audit function that provides you as a committee the assurance on the internal controls, and our audit function isn't looking to replace that or test all of the controls within the organisation. It's only the ones that are relevant to the audit. But in doing so, that does allow us to feed back to you any findings that we have on the effectiveness, the operational effectiveness of those internal controls. And that would form part of our reporting back to you in September. We have been appointed as independent auditors. Part of our regulations and our ethical standards require us to ensure that we are independent of the organisation, and that's independent as a firm and also independent as individuals who work on the audit team. So every member of the audit team has to consider independence and confirm their independence. And we also look at any other services, for example, that we might provide to yourself or other related organisations that could potentially impair our independence. And I'm pleased to confirm that there are no issues to report to you in relation to independence, and we've finalised our assessment at the planning stage and can confirm that we can perform our work independently. Section 2 of the report is the risk assessment that I've just referred to. The report starts with a graph just to pictorially represent the initial risk assessment at this stage, and you'll notice there's 2 types of risks on that graph. We've got significant risks and elevated risks. Significant risks are defined by our international standards of auditing, so there's a strict definition in them in terms of what significant risks are and what our audit response needs to be to those significant risks. And the standards actually go further to tell us that there are 2 significant risks that we should consider as significant on all of the audits that we perform for whichever organisation, and they're the 2 that you can see highlighted on the graph there. The first being management override of controls, which has to be a significant risk on all of the audits we do. The second is the risk of fraud in revenue recognition, and there's a rebuttable presumption that that would be a significant risk on all of the audits that we do. And in the case of WME's audit, we've not rebutted that presumption, so we've included it as a significant risk. In addition to significant risks, which are assessed as significant based on the axis on the graph, really, in terms of if there's a high magnitude to the risk and there's a high likelihood of error, we also have elevated risks, which is our own risk assessment and specific to WME. And as part of our audit planning processes, we've identified 3 elevated risks. The first is going concern. We also have COVID-19 related risk, and we've got the derecognition of the pension scheme that's occurred in the year as a large one-off transaction that's also an elevated risk. And I will come on to talk about all of these risks in a little bit more detail now. If we start with the two significant risks, we've detailed our audit response to those assessed risks in the plan. As I say, they are significant risks on all of the audits we do. The international standards on audit have essentially responded to what we've seen in the business world over the last few years, and particular instances where fraud's had a significant impact on organisations and their financial statements. Particularly management override of controls. I guess any organisation, and WME will be no exception, has a suite of internal controls, and they work on a day-to-day basis and provide you as the committee assurance that the transactions through the financial accounting system are operating as they should do. In any organisation, there will be individuals who, due to their position, will have the opportunity to override those controls. And really the risk is here that there could be individuals within the organisation that could override those internal controls for fraudulent purposes, so potentially for their own benefit or to misstate the financial statements. So our audit response to that is again driven by the ISAs. We look for any large one-off transactions. We look for any unusual transactions that are going through the accounting system. And I guess when we think of accounting systems, the vast majority of transactions that flow through are automated. So if we looked at a customer receipt, for example, that went through a standard off-the-shelf finance system, the double entry, the transaction will be largely automated. One area that's not and has got a lot of flexibility is manual journals. And manual journals can normally be posted to virtually any account within the chart of accounts. And because of that, they tend to have the potential to be used to mask any fraudulent activities if that was the case. So we look for any large, unusual manual journals that are maybe being posted by people that we wouldn't expect to post through the accounting system, or maybe journals that are posted at a time that we wouldn't expect them to be posted. So weekend journals or out of hours journals, or journals that are being posted to nominal accounts that we wouldn't normally expect journals to go to. So maybe a bank account or a creditor's control account. We also, as part of revenue, will look at the cut-off as well, and I think we've assessed that the highest risk in terms of misrepresenting revenue, if there was a motivation to do so, would be around what revenue is included within which financial period, and therefore we particularly look at transactions around the year end and make sure that they're included in the correct period. Okay, moving on to the elevated risks. We've assessed going concern as an elevated risk, and lots of that is in relation really to, I guess, the current environment that we all find ourselves in, and the particularly challenging, I guess, economic environment that businesses are operating in at the moment. And again, our regulatory bodies have indicated to us that at the moment there's really a rebuttable assumption that going concern would be of heightened risk for most organisations. And again, we haven't rebutted that presumption, and we will consider going concern as an elevated risk. And that's really our response to that is around assessing management's going concern assessment. So when the committee come to sign off the accounts, and when we come to sign off the audit report, going concern is effectively signing off the accounts on the basis that the organisation can continue to meet its liabilities as they fall due for the foreseeable future. And that foreseeable future is generally seen as 12 months from the date of signing. So if the accounts are signed in September of this year, they'll be signed on the basis that the organisation can continue to at least the end of September 2022 to meet its liabilities as they fall due. So really we'll review management's assessment of the budget's forecasts for the upcoming year, and I guess facilities to be able to meet the cash demands of the business. And we'll also look at how the current environment is impacting WME specifically and whether or not that causes any particular concern in relation to going concern. And in a related matter as well, we've also put COVID-19 fraud risk as an elevated risk. We have seen, and I think the whole economy has seen a rise in fraud over the last 12 months, and that's part of that is because the opportunity to commit fraud has increased. So with people working remotely, there's a change in processes that have happened in lots of organisations. So there's certainly been instances of fraudsters being aware of the changes of controls and processes. And I'm thinking of things like maybe authorisation of purchase invoices that might be happening over email at the moment. So authority might be being given by email as opposed to in person as when people are in the office. And there are instances, and there have been instances both nationally and locally, of people hijacking email trails, jumping in on those email conversations and fraudulently authorising or misauthorising transactions to dummy suppliers. So we will assess the impact that COVID-19 and particularly remote working's had on the organisation, and just consider if there's any particular procedures that we need to carry out to respond to that risk. Lastly, on the risk assessment, we've got the derecognition of the pension scheme. And this is really just because it's a large one-off transaction that's clearly going to have a very material impact on the financial statements, and the derecognition of that pension scheme liability and how it flows through the financial statements we'll pay particular attention to. We'll ensure that it's in accordance with the legal agreements that are driving the derecognition, and we'll also ensure that the way that the pension scheme liability is released through the financial statements is in accordance with the IFRS accounting rules. Okay, on to section 3, which is materiality, and I'll pass over to Alex to pick up from here.
Okay, thanks, John. Hi everyone, it's Alex again from WR Partners. Moving on to materiality, which is section 3. And just quickly, just to I guess provide background in terms of the concept of materiality.
Sorry, Alex, it's Ben Boswell from Herefordshire. You're looping through someone's mic, so can someone else mute, please? Thank you.
Okay, is that better now?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, it was just we could hear you twice, that was all.
No, that's okay. So yeah, I was just quickly touching on the concept of materiality, which effectively applies to monetary amounts and disclosure requirements of the financial statements. Amounts would be considered material if they influence the economic decisions of users who are reading the financial statements. In setting our materiality for WME, we use a benchmark which is linked to the turnover of the organisation, and it's worth noting that this benchmark is consistent with what previous auditors have used for WME as well. That benchmark is on turnover, and it's 2% of turnover, which drives our materiality levels. What we have done as at the planning stage is cap that materiality level to the expected surplus for the financial period to March 2021. So in effect, that materiality level would not be higher than the expected surplus. And that materiality level, as documented within section 3.2, is £700,000, or is expected to be around that £700,000 mark for the year-end audit. We do also assess particular areas of the financial statements which might have a separate materiality level. And in this case, we've identified related party balances as having their own materiality level of effectively nil due to being material by nature. We'll pick up on related party disclosure balances in a second. So they effectively have their own materiality level of nil. Within section 3.3 on the report is around matters reporting and our reporting to yourselves. Whilst we do have that top end materiality level of £700,000, that really is the level which drives the audit opinion on the financial statements. We do report back to you with any, I guess, errors or issues arising which are above a trivial threshold. That trivial threshold has been identified as at £35,000. So when we report back to you through our audit close memorandum, At the September meeting, it will include any issues above that £35,000 mark. So there's effectively two levels we're working towards: the top materiality level of £700,000 and then the reportable level of £35,000. So that's materiality covered, and moving on to section 4, which 4.1 covers laws and regulations. So just to confirm, as part of our audit approach, we do review key laws and regulations which are applicable to the entity, and really we're looking for any potential impact on the financial statements through non-compliance. So that impact might be due to a financial penalty which needs to be accounted for and disclosed, or as well potential reputational damage to the entity which might impact future transactions, future business, and impact on things like going concern. The key laws and regulations we've identified as at the planning stage as being key to WME are the Code of Practice of Local Authority Accounting, which is the accounts preparation basis, employment law, health and safety regulations, and GDPR compliance. To date, we understand there's been no issues during the financial year to date with any of those laws and regulations as at today's date. Moving on to section 4.2, which is the key accounting estimates, and again, audit regulations require us to assess the key accounting estimates which are used within the basis of preparation of the accounts. Key accounting estimates, I guess, are particular areas which may include key judgment calls and potential management bias linking into the risk assessment John's just talked through. Within the current year, we've identified 4 key accounting estimates used within the preparation of the financial statements, which are depreciation, bad debt provision, prepayments, and accruals and deferred income. So those are the key accounting estimates identified, and we will perform specific audit testing tailored to those. Section 4.3 on the report covers related parties, and accounting standards require that related party transactions are disclosed within the accounts. The current process, as we understand from in place at WME, is effectively for member sign-off of any and sign-off and declaration of any related party transactions, as we saw at the start of the meeting in terms of business interests, and also a formal sign-off when we get to the year end. That's been the process which has been in place for a number of years, I believe, at WME, and effectively what we'll do from our audit testing is just review that process, review those declarations made, and ensure that any disclosure within the accounts is in line with those declarations. Just a final point on related parties, but declarations should also include close family members or consideration of close family members, as well as just the member themselves, and also key management of West Mercia Energy. Okay, moving on to section 5, which is the workflow and audit approach, and effectively lays out the timetable of the current year audit. At the top line, I guess, is where we are now in terms of the planning and interim work we've performed in February, and our presentation of the audit plan today on the 2nd of March. Our main audit work, receipt of accounts and detailed audit testing, is scheduled for midsummer, end of June, and the audit week, the first week of July. In July, we'll then hold our initial findings discussion with management, and really that's gearing up towards the September joint committee meeting, where we will report back to you on our audit findings through our audit close memorandum, and the anticipated sign-off of the accounts and audit report in September. So all those dates shown on section 5 have all been agreed with management, and is the timetable we're working to effectively. And then final page to cover, which is page 6, included for transparency and completeness, which is our audit fee for the current year. As Nigel mentioned right at the start of the external audit process, there was a tender performed in the back end of 2020, and this was the fee which was effectively submitted as part of that tender process. So it has been agreed with management, and includes some of the key delivery points on within section 6. That, I think, John, was everything to cover off. So I'll hand back to you if that's okay.
Yep, thanks, Alex. I think that covers the service plan. The only other point I would note, and it's an important one really, is just on the front page of the service plan is the contact details for myself and Alex. And I guess it's really important, particularly in this first year, that the committee is aware that they have a direct line into ourselves as external auditors. So if there are any queries, concerns, or any questions that come out of reflection after this, then please do feel free to use those contact details to get in touch with us directly. Otherwise, the only other area that we need to confirm with you, and again, this is driven by our international auditing standards, is we just need to confirm with you directly as committee members that you're not aware of any material frauds within the organisation or breaches of laws or regulations that could have a material impact on the financial statements. If you are, please obviously do use those contact details to let us know, because it's important that we factor those into the to the audit plan. Otherwise, that covers the key areas that we wanted to present to you today, but we're clearly happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, well, thank you, John and Alex, for a very, very clear explanation. That was extremely helpful. Thank you. So moving on now to members' questions. Just a reminder, if you could say your name before you speak, please. So I have a question on the chat from Gemma.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I just wanted to do a couple of things. Firstly, give myself a pat on the back for saying go out and do a procurement exercise to make sure that we have got value for money. So I'm glad that it's come out that perhaps we've done a more comprehensive procurement exercise, but more importantly, how exciting it is to have a local firm doing it. I think that's a really good thing for social value within what change we can make by doing procurement exercises. So I just wanted to welcome you to the team, and also great to see a local firm being used.
Thank you, Gemma. Do I have any further questions from the committee? Oh, I see heads shaking. Well, obviously, gentlemen, you've done a very good job at explaining it. In which case, if there are no more speakers, the recommendations are to approve the draft audit plan and to approve the commissioning of WR Partners to undertake the audit in accordance with the audit plan. Could I have a proposer and a seconder?
Yeah, happy to propose, Councillor Davis.
And I'm quite happy to second, Peter Nuttin at Shropshire.
That's lovely. Okay, unless I'm going to work on the basis that if I hear nothing, that is consent. Are you all happy with that? I think there's a strange loop in there. So, okay, then I'll accept those recommendations on behalf of the committee, unless anyone indicates differently. Okay, good, thank you. And thank you, John and Alex, again. So moving on to item 9, Internal Audit Performance Report to March 21. Can Kerry introduce herself and present this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Kerry Plasky, Head of Internal Audit. Members have in front of them the report with an update on what we've completed against the Internal Audit Plan. If I take members' attention to paragraph 5.6. This is a table that summarises the areas that we've looked at, the opinions that we've given and the recommendations delivered. And you'll see that there are 5 good assurance levels in place across the systems: debtors, finance, corporate governance, risk management, information technology and procurement. We found no significant issues to bring to the committee's attention, and that's supported by the no fundamental and the no significant recommendations. Of those requires attention recommendations, we've agreed a time frame and lead officers with West Mercia Energy to implement them. To support the detail behind this table, there are copies of the full audit reports attached as appendices. And if I just take you to the first one, West Mercia Energy Debtors Income Report 2021, if members refer to paragraph 8 in that report, It identifies the detail of the different controls that we looked at and we did testing behind, and the ticks beside each of one of those identify that those controls are in place. So that provides the assurance behind the work that's summarised in the report. I'm not going to go into further detail of the reports, but I'm happy to take any questions on them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kerry. I like is that a new layout? I think that the report presentation, the second part.
I think it's slightly changed. We refine it all the time to try and improve it, Chair.
Thank you. Well, looks very good. Okay. Do I have any questions or comments? I'm thinking not, and I do apologise if you can hear background noise. It's my neighbour doing some DIY. Okay, in which case, can I have a proposer and a seconder to endorse the comments, etc. in the plan?
Peter Nuttin, Shropshire, more than happy to propose the recommendations.
Thank you. Seconder? I'm happy to do that for the sake of moving things along. Okay, thank you, everybody. So moving on to item 10, Internal Audit Strategic Plan 21-22. Kerry, can you present this to us, please?
Thank you, Chair. Kerry Pulaski, Head of Internal Audit. This report gives you the details behind the proposed programme of audit work for the year 21-22. What we have done is we've spoken to officers at West Mercia Energy to identify the audit priorities and to explore the risks, and deliver the appendices which details the proposed audit plan. We've also considered COVID and the impact on West Mercia's governance and internal control environment, and explored this, and staff were well established to work from home as required, and the impact of COVID will be on future customer demands, and this will be considered in business plans. In terms of planning, we've taken into account any changes to systems or processes, any changes to personnel or the risk management frameworks, as well as the risk appetites. And so we've detailed in Appendix A on page 54 for members the split across the different areas, and again there's some detail behind that for members to consider. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Kerry. Do members have any questions for Kerry? I can see those with their cameras on shaking their heads, but I can't tell from those who don't have their cameras on. In which case it sounds like there are no questions. So can I thank you for doing an excellent job once again. And can I therefore have a proposer and a seconder for endorsement, with comments of which there are none, the proposed programme of audits for 21-22?
Peter Nuttin, Shropshire, happy to propose the recommendations.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone like to second it?
Councillor Macy from Shropshire, happy to second.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you both, and thank you, Kerry, and your team for all your hard work. So moving on to item 11, Anti-Slavery and Human Trafficking Statement 2021. Can I ask Nigel to talk to this, please?
Thank you, Chair. Nigel Evans, Director, West Mercia Energy. This report is asking the Joint Committee to approve the draft transparency statement for 2021 and to delegate authority to myself to finalise the statement once the financial year has ended. The statement is very much in line with that agreed last year and the policy document which was approved by the Joint Committee in September 2017. Once the statement is finalised post year end, I will ensure that it is published on our website. Happy to take any questions. Otherwise, I request that the Joint Committee approves the recommendations set out under paragraphs 2 on page 55. I have noticed a typo under paragraph 2.1, which states in error 21-22. and should read 2021. Apologies for this typo. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nigel. I have a question from Gemma.
Hi, thanks, Nigel, for that introduction. Just a quick question on it. I know that it's quite a difficult one to do these anti-slavery statements. We have to deal with them in the NHS. But I just wondered, have there been any issues this year at all? Because I know that the statement says that we've monitored it, we've taken steps to ensure that they're fully compliant. Do we have a breakdown of how we're doing that? And if so, could it be shared?
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I mean, our main supply chain is with our gas and electricity supplier, Total Gas and Power, so that's covered as part of the procurement process. Similarly with our other suppliers, smaller suppliers such as our liquid fuels provider. And then the rest of our cost base from our supplier base is very often the member authorities. We've got detailed SLA with Shropshire Council, so that's covered by their work as well. So we've got quite a restricted supply base really, so it makes it somewhat easier for ourselves.
No, that makes sense. Thanks for that, Nigel. I didn't really correlate between the fact that you have really got a limited amount of people that you're doing and that they're quite larger companies that will have to comply with the statement on their own. Indeed. So thanks.
Okay. Don't have any other questions for Nigel? No, in which case then you've heard the recommendations. Can I have a seconder and a proposer and a seconder?
Nobody else seems to want the job, so I'm more than happy to propose the report.
And I'll second it for the sake of time. So that's moved and seconded. Thank you. Thank you for your work on that, Nigel. Moving on to item 12, our risk management update. Back to you, Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Nigel Evans, Director of West Mercia Energy. Annually, the Joint Committee are asked to review the WME risk management strategy. I think Joint Committee meeting, I present details of the key risks identified. Firstly, with regards to strategy, this was approved at the February meeting last year, and there are no proposed changes to the strategy this year. In terms of the risks, the current risk register comprises of 76 risks, the majority of which have controls in place which mitigate the impact of these risks to an acceptable level. The table under 5.4 highlights the 5 risks which have been identified at a medium risk level. No risks have been identified at the high level. Briefly running through these risks, the breach of the product tolerance levels in September was viewed to be a high risk, but is now being reclassified at a lower medium level, as we believe the impact will now be lower than previously estimated. The next 3 risks remain at the same level as at the previous meeting, and we will continue to closely monitor these within the business through the coming months. The risk level associated with the loss of key external contracts has been increased due to the likelihood level being considered greater than previous. This is largely driven by the fact that we have relatively more contracts up for renewal at the end of March 22 than in previous years. We will, of course, do all that we're able to do so to retain these contracts moving forward. The risk relating to the impact of COVID-19 lockdown measures on our lower volumes has now been revised from a medium to a lower level moving forward. Happy to take any questions, otherwise I request that the Joint Committee approves the recommendations set out under paragraphs 2.1 and 2.2 on page 59.
Thank you, Nigel. Liz, don't forget to unmute.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nigel. I'm interested to not see climate change and change of customer behaviour in the risk list, and I'm just wondering how you assess that as a risk and why it hasn't appeared in the information that's been put in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. We do in fact have some risks identified in the risk register relating to the green agenda. One of the key ones identified is ensuring that we have green products available to support our customers moving forward. And I think potentially a couple of meetings ago that was highlighted perhaps at a higher level. We have developed a number of products to support our customers over the last 12 months, which I'll cover under the business plan update. So it is a risk identified, and it is a clear one that we need to keep a close eye on moving forward to make sure that we develop the business to support our customers on the green carbon reduction agenda moving forward.
But you're not seeing it as a significant risk to the business at this time?
Not at this time, not in the short term. We feel that we've mitigated the risks to a lower level at this point, but there's much more to do.
Okay, well, I think we'll pick this up in the later agenda item then. Happy to.
Yeah.
And thank you for raising that, Liz. It was on my mind as well, as I'm on the pension fund, and it's an issue there as well. Do I have any other questions on this? No? In which case then, you've heard the recommendations. Can I have a proposer?
Well, shall I jump in and show that I'm quite prepared to propose? So I'll propose this one then.
Thank you. And I'll second. So that's moved. Thank you. So at this point, I think we're on item 13, which is exclusion of press and public. Is that correct? Okay. Would members like a quick break to top up their coffee, etc.? I'm seeing a yes. Shall we take 5 minutes and try and get back just before 11, if that's okay? Okay. See you in a minute.